I remember the address. 1147 West Grayson Avenue, just outside of Tulsa. Not because the house was particularly memorable, but because of that one damn porch light. It was always on. Morning, night, rain, drought, didn't matter. You could pass it at 3 a.m., and that single, flickering yellow bulb would be glowing like it was expecting someone who never came. That's what drew me in. A detail most people wouldn't notice. But when you've worked enough homicide scenes, you start to understand that the ordinary is often what hides extraordinary. I was no longer with the department. I had retired, technically. But when old Detective Ruiz called me up saying something didn't sit right at the scene they closed as a suicide, I was already lacing up my boots before he finished the sentence. The victim was a 34-year-old woman named Dana Alcott, school teacher, quiet, lived alone, found dead in her living room. Cause of death, carbon monoxide poisoning. The heater had a leak. No sign of struggle. No forced entry. Case closed. But here's the part Ruiz couldn't explain. The heater had been serviced 2 weeks prior. Certified safe. And that porch light? Neighbors said it had never turned off in over 2 years, until the morning Dana was found. That morning it was off. Something about that change gnawed at me. When I arrived at the scene, the place was spotless. Too spotless. The kind of clean that smells like lemon and desperation. Crime scene techs had already done their sweep, but I noticed the coffee table had fresh scratches. Faint but irregular, like it had been moved recently and carelessly. There was no reason for Dana to drag that table. Especially not alone. Especially not as she was already drowsy from gas inhalation. In the kitchen, I found her laptop. Power cable disconnected, but the battery was charged. I opened it. No recent emails. Internet history wiped. Suspicious? Maybe. But here's the thing. The recycle bin wasn't empty. Someone had deleted files, but not permanently. I recovered a few documents. Lesson plans. A resignation letter. And one file that didn't fit, titled Night Audit. It was a scanned receipt. Dated the night before her death. 2 hotel room charges. One in Dana's name. One in a man's name, Elliot Farrow. I ran the name through some old databases. He was a contractor. No criminal record. But he had filed a restraining order against a former employer 3 years ago. Guess where he used to work? The same school as Dana. Now I had a connection. But not a motive. Back at the house, I returned to the porch. I stared at that stupid light fixture, trying to reverse engineer a ghost. The bulb had been twisted just enough to break the circuit, but not removed. That's not something you do accidentally. That's something you do when you want darkness, without leaving a trace. A neighbor, Mrs. Halpern, had mentioned something else. Dana always left the porch light on for her sister, but her sister had died in a car crash 3 years ago. So who was Dana waiting for? I pulled surveillance from a traffic camera across the street. Just a shot of the front of her house. Nothing sophisticated. But it caught movement. 11:47 p.m., night of her death. A man approaching the house. Then a flicker. The porch light went out. I zoomed in, enhanced, ran facial recognition. Elliot Farrow. He claimed he hadn't seen Dana in 2 years. Claimed he was out of town that weekend. The hotel receipt and traffic cam said otherwise. But here's the part that clinched it. The heater leak? It wasn't the heater at all. It was a rigged exhaust pipe in the garage, running on the floor vent into the living room. Amateur job, but lethal. Whoever did it had intended it to be slow and quiet. We found fingerprints on the inside of the vent panel. Not Dana's. Farrow's. He confessed after 3 hours of questioning. Said she had threatened to expose him for inappropriate conduct back when they worked together. He had gotten her fired quietly. When she threatened to go public, he panicked. He went to her house under the pretense of closure. They drank wine. He slipped a sedative into her glass. Then he went out to disable the porch light, because she always left it on, and he couldn't bear to look at it. That light, always on for someone, was the only reason I knew something was wrong. He didn't notice the scratch marks when he dragged the table to block the vent. He didn't know about digital recovery of deleted files. He didn't count on a retired forensic tech who still noticed flickering lights. Sometimes the most ordinary things, a bulb, a scratch, a file, tell you everything. And sometimes justice comes not from the loud moments, but the ones that should have stayed lit. I've said this 100 times. Crime scenes lie. They lie in silence, in symmetry, in what's too clean or too chaotic. But the most dangerous lies are the ones that come disguised as accidents. Things that shouldn't be there, or shouldn't be missing. That case in Newark started with a call about a suicide. The victim was a 42-year-old architect named Daniel Keene. No history of mental illness, no note. Found lying in the kitchen of his apartment. A single gunshot wound to the chest, revolver in his right hand. To everyone else, it looked open and shut. To me, it looked staged. I was called in late because the lead detective had a gut feeling, but no hard reason to doubt the scene. When I walked in, I wasn't looking for blood patterns or ballistic angles. Not yet. I was looking for something that didn't belong. Or something that did, but in the wrong place. His apartment was minimalist, borderline sterile. He was one of those guys who used the same 3 mugs and kept his forks organized by size. But there, under the dining table, just barely visible from the angle where his body lay, was a fork. Not just any fork. A heavy, brushed steel one. Out of place. Alone. It was on the floor. Tines down. No food, no plate nearby. And when I opened the silverware drawer, something clicked. His cutlery set didn't match. All his utensils were a matte black design. This one was silver, a different brand entirely. That fork didn't belong in his kitchen. Now, maybe someone dropped it. A guest. Maybe it had fallen earlier. That's what someone would argue. But you learn to trust small things. A fork on the floor, in the wrong house, is a whisper louder than a scream. Daniel's laptop had been wiped. Professionally, his phone was missing. The security camera outside his apartment building had mysteriously stopped recording between 1:12 and 1:45 a.m., exactly the window where he would have been killed. Coincidence? Maybe. But then there was the fingerprint analysis. No print on the fork. Not even his. That didn't make sense. If it had fallen naturally, it would have at least had some trace of him. Even wiped, there would have been smudges or partials. This thing was clean like someone wanted it gone, but didn't want to touch it again to pick it up. So why was it still there? Because someone panicked. Or because they wanted us to find it. A week before his death, Daniel had pulled out of a project with a major tech firm, citing ethical concerns over a residential AI surveillance design. He had confided in his sister that someone was pressuring him to stay on board. When I dug into his recent communications, I found several deleted emails, reconstructed from a backup from a JP. No full name, no return address, just a burner email. All threats, veiled, polite, but unmistakable. We cross-referenced the IPs with known VPN activity and got a partial match to a private security contractor, a consultant hired by the same tech firm. His name was Jeremy Porter. Now here's where it gets cinematic. We went to interview Porter. He was calm, too calm. Said he never met Daniel in person. Claimed to have only communicated through legal channels. But during the conversation, he offered us drinks. I noticed something when he brought them in. The forks on his kitchen counter. Same make, same pattern, same brushed steel design as the one found under Daniel's table. I requested a warrant to seize his kitchen set. Porter didn't object. Back at the lab, we ran microscopic patterning on the tines of his forks and compared it to the one from the scene. And we found it, a unique scratch pattern from an industrial dishwasher groove. Same make, same cycle intensity. Statistically improbable, unless it came from the same home. The fork was the breadcrumb. Porter had visited Daniel, likely under pretense of a friendly meeting or final negotiation. They'd eaten. Something escalated. Daniel threatened exposure. Porter panicked. Or maybe it was always meant to end this way. He brought a revolver to stage a suicide. But in the cleanup, he dropped one of his own forks. Maybe he thought it was Daniel's. Maybe he didn't even realize he dropped it. The fork was his fingerprint. He confessed under pressure after we confronted him with the trace evidence. Claimed it wasn't supposed to go that far. Said Daniel was going to ruin everything. He was right. Daniel was going to ruin everything. For a corrupt system. For a surveillance company trying to monitor homes without consent. And for a man who made one mistake in a moment of arrogance. He left behind a utensil from his own drawer. I've seen murder solved by fibers, by half a print, by the direction blood dried. But this was the first case I closed because of a single fork on the floor. Sometimes the truth doesn't scream. It clinks, quiet, metallic, and waiting to be found. They say every missing person case starts the same way. A phone that goes straight to voicemail, a bedroom too neat, and a parent's voice trembling through the 911 call. But what made this one different wasn't how it began. It was what I found on the second day, in a house that smelled like apple pie and quiet denial. Her name was Emily Hart, 17, a good student, no history of running away. Her mother, Denise, called the police when Emily didn't come home from a friend's birthday party on Friday night. No note, no text, nothing. When I arrived, it was just after sunrise. The Hart home sat in a suburb that felt designed by someone who hated unpredictability. Every lawn the same. Every house with vinyl siding. The kind of place where people nod but never look each other in the eye. Denise met me at the door in a robe and slippers. Her mascara from yesterday still clung to her eyes, like she hadn't had the courage to wash it away yet. She never does this, she repeated. Not once. I walked through Emily's room first. The scent of her was still there, vanilla lotion, dryer sheets, teenage fear. Nothing looked out of place. Her laptop was closed. Her phone charger was plugged in, but the phone was gone. I opened her closet. Her backpack was still there. That didn't fit. She had supposedly left around 7 p.m. to go to her friend Cassie's party. I spoke to Cassie that afternoon. She never showed, she told me. We thought she bailed. Cassie showed me a text Emily sent her at 6:32 p.m. Leaving now, see you soon. I checked cell tower data. Her phone pinged near her house at 6:34. Then nothing. Dead silence. On a hunch, I revisited the house that night. Something didn't sit right. I remember Denise saying Emily's window stuck sometimes. When I went to check it, I noticed the latch had no dust on it. The others did. I tried opening it. It slid up smoothly. Too smoothly. Outside, beneath that window, the mulch had been recently disturbed. Barely, but just enough. Someone had stepped there. Or landed. The next morning, I checked their neighbor's security camera. Most people don't think to ask neighbors on the side of the house, especially ones with a fence and no view of the front door. At 6:29 p.m., the camera caught a figure slipping out the side of the Hart house. Emily. She wasn't carrying a bag. She looked hesitant, like she wasn't going to a party. She turned left, not toward the street, but toward the park trail. I followed up with the parks department. A worker remembered seeing a young girl in a red hoodie that night sitting alone on a bench. That detail hadn't gone public. I requested footage from a traffic camera facing the park entrance. At 6:41 p.m., a white SUV stopped for only a second at the trail entrance. The license plate was too blurry to make out, but the vehicle had a sticker in the back window. I support vets. When I mentioned this to Denise, she froze. That's Kevin's car, she whispered. Her boyfriend. Kevin was a 42-year-old ex-Marine with a clean record, at least on paper. He had reported seeing Emily that night. Said he was working a late shift, except he wasn't. His work records showed he clocked out at 5:12 p.m. His phone had been off all night. When we brought him in, he didn't ask what it was about. He just stared at the table. I sat across from him. I didn't ask about Emily. I asked about the sticker. He cracked, in pieces. Emily hadn't gone to the party. She hadn't wanted to. She'd been scared. She was trying to run, not from home, but from him. Kevin confessed that she confronted him that afternoon about something she'd found. Messages he'd sent to someone he thought she wouldn't know about. She threatened to tell her mother. said she was going to the police. He panicked, waited until Denise went to the store, tried to talk Emily down, but words turned into hands. And when she hit her head on the corner of the table, he said it was an accident. He wrapped her in a blanket, put her in the trunk, buried her near a construction site off Highway 32. We found her 2 days later, still wearing the red hoodie, still clutching the phone. She never got to unlock again. Denise never spoke during the recovery. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself, watching strangers carry her daughter's life out in bags. Some crimes announce themselves in blood and fire. Others, they hide in homes that look like yours, behind smiles that never slip. This one hid behind a window that was never supposed to open, and a man who wore a sticker like it meant something. Some girls never come home, but they don't just vanish. They're erased, and sometimes someone's the one holding the eraser. There are few things that catch my attention faster than something out of place. After years walking through bloodstains, burned floorboards, and families shattered by seconds of chaos, your brain is trained to see what shouldn't be there, or sometimes what should be just not where it is. That's how this story starts. With a coat, I was called to a townhouse in a quiet Louisville suburb. A wealthy neurosurgeon named Dr. Carter Hensley was found dead in his own home office, slumped over a glass desk, gun in hand, one shot clean through the mouth. Suicide by all initial accounts. The house was pristine like a showroom, and Hensley was a man who ran his life like a checklist. Divorced, no children, lived alone, no mental health issues, no suicide note. But what caught my eye wasn't on the desk or near the body. It was by the front door, a beige wool coat, slightly wrinkled, hanging on the far left hook of a 5-prong rack. That wouldn't be strange in most homes. But Dr. Hensley, according to his housekeeper, always hung his coat on the third hook. Always. He said the left hook was bad luck, she told me, wringing her hands as she stood beside the granite countertop. Some nonsense about symmetry. That coat was too easy to overlook, but it gnawed at me. I checked the pockets. Nothing personal. No wallet. No car keys. No phone. Just a lint-covered cough drop and a movie ticket stub dated 4 days earlier. The film, Chained, a thriller, ironically about a man who fakes his own death. I asked for security footage from Hensley's front porch. The system was offline. Maintenance issue, according to the logs, conveniently starting 2 days before the incident. Same for his interior motion sensors, disabled manually from the main panel. It was too clean. The gun had no prints but Hensley's. The glass desk had a single tumbler with fingerprint smudges consistent with recent handling. Whiskey. Neat. Expensive. Same bottle half empty, on the shelf. I asked for a tox screen. Nothing unusual. But what I wanted wasn't in his blood. It was in his inbox. His email showed a string of professional conversations. Nothing urgent. But then, on the morning of his death, a message sent from his address at 6:17 a.m. to a private contact named B. Just a single line. I can't keep lying. That was 2 hours before his estimated time of death. But here's the thing. According to his calendar, Hensley had a surgery scheduled for 9 a.m. that same day. Booked. Confirmed. Why would a man about to kill himself bother confirming a surgery? I requested more background. That's when something clicked. Hensley's ex-wife, Marissa, had a brother named Bennett Caro, a freelance medical consultant, known for living fast, in and out of financial troubles. The connection? Caro had once pitched Hensley an offshore investment scheme. Hensley declined. Caro filed for bankruptcy 2 months later. I ran a DMV check on Bennett. Height, build, similar to Hensley. Just enough for a blurry figure on low-res footage to pass as him. But more telling, Caro drove a gray 2017 Ford Explorer. One just like it was caught by a neighbor's doorbell camera parked 3 houses down on the night before the incident. I brought in Marissa. She hadn't spoken to her brother in weeks. Claimed she didn't even know where he was staying. But when I mentioned the coat, her face changed. That's Bennett's coat, she said. I gave it to him last Christmas. That was enough for a warrant. We found Carroll hiding in a rental cabin 2 counties over. In his bag, Hensley's backup phone. He cracked fast. The plan was to stage the suicide, collect on a hidden insurance policy, and sell access to Hensley's private medical files to an out-of-country buyer. He'd impersonated Carter for days, even sent that email as misdirection. But the hook gave him away. One small detail. One human habit you can't fake. I've seen murders hidden under fires. Crimes masked by drugs. But this was a ghost story with no ghost. Just a coat, and a man who forgot where another man liked to hang his. Because in the end, the most dangerous thing in a crime scene is what seems ordinary. You learn to read a scene like a book. Not the words, but the margins, where things are slightly off, slightly too neat, too convenient. And when I walked into the Whitaker residence that Tuesday morning, I knew something wasn't right. The air smelled of bleach and lemon. Not uncommon. Except the maid's service had been canceled 2 weeks earlier. I knew that too. Thomas Whitaker, 58, CEO of a mid-sized tech firm in Seattle. Divorced. No kids. Found dead in his home office. Slumped at his desk. Apparent heart attack. At first glance, everything aligned. No signs of forced entry. No bruises. Nothing overturned. But it's never what's missing that bothers me. It's what doesn't belong. I scanned the kitchen out of habit. That's when I saw it. A single coffee cup in the drying rack. Spotless. Bone white ceramic. Not a trace of residue. Not a watermark. Too clean. Now, Thomas was a creature of habit. Every morning at 6:15, he brewed a cup of Colombian roast in a black French press. Same ceramic cup. He drank it slowly while reading the financial section. I knew this because 2 weeks ago, in a completely unrelated fraud investigation, I'd been watching his routine for pattern anomalies. He was precise, meticulous, but not obsessive. He never washed the cup until after his second cup. That cup should have been sitting on his desk, or in the sink with a faint brown ring. But it wasn't. It was sterile. I walked back to the office. His laptop was closed, which was strange. Whitaker always worked with it open. His email notifications piled up like unpaid bills. But here's the detail that finally pulled the string. His calendar was open on the tablet beside him. A single meeting blocked out for the morning. LA call, final confirmation. Yet, there were no signs of a call having taken place. No Bluetooth headset. No Teams log. No Zoom history. I checked his desk drawers. A notepad. Notes from earlier meetings. But nothing from today. His phone sat on the desk. I scrolled through it. Recent calls. The last outgoing call was 2 days ago. But one text stood out. Sent last night at 11:12 p.m. Just a single word. Agreed. To who? The number wasn't saved. A burner? I ran a trace. It pinged a prepaid number activated in Los Angeles. I made a note. Here's where the cup came back. The autopsy report showed he'd ingested digitalis, a heart medication, but in a dosage far above therapeutic range. Lethal, tasteless in coffee. The coroner suggested suicide. I disagreed, because the cup was clean. If you poison your coffee, you don't wash the cup, and you certainly don't dry it and place it back on the rack. No fingerprints on the cup, not even his. Just microscopic traces of cotton fiber. From gloves. Latex ones don't shed fibers. Cotton ones do. Someone was careful, but not careful enough. His security system showed no breaches. But I knew better. Tech guys often install off-grid redundancies. I found a mini DVR behind a bookshelf in the living room. Analog. Wired to an old pinhole cam above the kitchen. Not connected to Wi-Fi. Hidden. I played it. At 5:52 a.m., a woman entered. Early 40s. Athletic. Black hoodie. Familiar face. She poured coffee, stirred something in, left the cup on the counter, sat down at the island. When Whitaker entered, he looked surprised, not scared. They talked for 7 minutes. She slid the cup to him. He drank. He collapsed within minutes. She stood, walked to the sink, washed the cup, dried it, put it on the rack, wiped the counter. Then she left. Quiet as a whisper. Her name was Camille Radford, former VP of Development, fired 3 months ago for internal espionage. Rumor was she had leveraged company secrets. No proof ever surfaced. Until now. Turns out the LA call on his calendar wasn't a conference. It was a settlement. She wanted to erase any trail before it could turn on her. But it was the coffee cup that ruined everything. If she had left it dirty, it might have passed as suicide. But she was too clean, too perfect. That's the thing about crime scenes. Real ones don't scream. They whisper. And if you've been listening as long as I have, you know it's not the blood that tells the truth. It's the shine on the porcelain.